The sun had barely lifted its shoulder above the factories when the supervisor called me out. Ricardo always kept his hands in his pockets like he was hiding something important, but this morning his jaw worked even tighter than normal. I followed him past clanking machines, the crashes back there drowning out every instinct that screamed for me to shout or beg or plead my case. I didn't plead though, I kept my jaw squared, refused to drop my eyes. In the side office, the air was stale with old cigar smoke and machine oil. "Carlo," Ricardo said, sidestepping the silent accusation in my gaze, "your contract's ended." He held out an envelope like it was a glass of bad water. "That's it," I asked. "I worked through night shifts, finished all your quotas, fixed Bernal's line when it jammed last week." Ricardo shook his head. "Budget's tight, you know it, HR had to cut." He shifted on his feet. "Listen, you make those little things of yours, make them. Sao Paulo's always got more jobs, but these music toys, time to get real rappers." The way he said toys ate at me. Guitar parts, necks, bodies, I built them at home when other men pressed walnuts into shape at the factory. All through my teens, my hands itched for wood shavings, not mechanical parts. When I called them instruments, nobody listened. They saw nothing but sawdust. I left with only the envelope and that familiar bitter taste. Outside, workers on their way in gave me sidelong glances. Some saw, some smirked. I took a deep breath and walked away, shoes already black with street dust. Home wasn't any softer. My mother made noise in the kitchen, hard and fast chopping of onions. "Again," she muttered when she caught the envelope edge peeking from my jacket. "You chase everything except decent work sempre." My Uncle Chico, with his feet on the table, grunted. "The world needs real labor. Not fools with guitar glue under their nails." I didn't reply. Rage poured through me, hot as steam from a kicked boiler. But I had learned something from wood. The slower you carve, the less it splinters. At night I sat on the edge of my cot, staring at the ceiling as the city's noise seeped through the window. Dogs barked, horns broke through sleep, and in the next room my mother murmured to her radio, hopeful I would finally see reason. I took odd jobs over the next months, sorting screws at a hardware store, fixing chairs in rich apartments, moving crates. Each evening, though, I came back to my own sliver of workshop in the back room, right beside the leaking laundry machine. My hands found comfort in old mahogany and spruce blocks rescued from recycling piles and junkyards. All I needed was the shape inside the wood waiting for me. The smell of planed cedar and hide glue clung to my clothes. The city thought it was silly, maybe, but every night I felt more certain. In deep, sleepless hours, confusion turned to resolve, my anger cooling into something almost peaceful. I built my first classical guitar that spring. The finish wasn't perfect. The wood had dings that only I could love, but her voice was clear. I played her in the quiet, thumb brushing over strings, imagining applause instead of the neighbor's TV leaking down the hallway. But outside, disbelief lived in every sideways glance. My cousin Mariana, sharp as glass, saw the guitar hanging above my workbench. "For whom? Street corner buskers," she jeered over Sunday lunch. "One day you'll see music's a hobby, boy." My father said nothing, but his sighs grew heavy. On the back wall, I tacked up a drawing, my dream. A shop front in the city center, my name in that neat handwriting I practiced over and over. Guitarist de Carlo. Sometimes, when the noise and doubts pressed too close, I would shut my eyes and imagine the bells over that door, the rows and rows of guitars with smooth, shining backs catching the sunlight. Years shuffled past. My mother's hair faded from black to silver, but her fear for me never dimmed. Evenings grew shorter as I took longer shifts, walking farther from home for scraps of extra hours. I pawned my watch to buy tools. I missed birthdays, turned down beers, retreated from crowded rooms full of laughter and talk of soccer games, because all my energy fed the shop that existed only in my head. When the first real chance came, it was small, a local acoustic festival searching for craftspeople to showcase their wares. I almost didn't send the application. I imagined the laughter when a man with no shopfront, just a borrowed table and a handful of self-built guitars, showed up among the fancy vendors. But that quiet part of me, the one that sharpened the blade, measured twice, worked through spite and tiredness, filled out the form anyway. The festival morning burned hot with possibility and nerves. I carried 3 guitars, each in worn canvas, to the venue. As I set up my battered stand, some of the older luthiers, men with silver badges and glimmering maple under black velvet, nodded with indulgent patience. "Fresh blood," they muttered. The first hours were rough. People glanced at my fretwork, then drifted to shinier goods. Some asked for price, then snorted behind their sunglasses. Alone at the stall, I wondered if all those years of saving, scraping and sanding meant nothing at all. But in the afternoon, a quiet, well-dressed man with strong hands lingered. He picked up the guitar I called Ross in her, turned her over thoughtfully, ran a thumb along the neck and plucked 3 notes, soft then firm. The sound drifted sweet and clear above the noisy crowd. His friend, a young woman with famous eyes from TV, joined in. They played a duet, the guitar's voice ringing in the glass hall. They stayed. They asked questions, not stupid or mocking, but real questions about bracing, about intonation, about the way I bent wood, about glue and top thickness and rosette patterns. I answered, hands shaking with hope and fear. The man nodded, his face unreadable. "You made this," he finally said. I held my ground and met his gaze. "Yes, sir, by hand, no tricks." A week later, an email arrived. The man was Marcelo Munhoz, a guitarist with a reputation that stretched across Brazil. He wanted to order 3 more guitars, payment up front. He wanted to visit my workshop. When I read it, I just sat down on the edge of my bed. The room was quiet except for the drums of my own heartbeat. I felt a flicker of triumph, distant and close both at once, as if it belonged to another version of me, one braver, one luckier. Still, I responded, attached photos, negotiated prices with a tight, trembling grip. Marcelo's order changed everything. After he picked up his 3rd guitar and posted a photo of it on his social media, tagged with my name, messages began to roll in. Requests, first from amateurs mapping out their wedding repertoire, then from well-known samba musicians who sneaked into my workshop back room, touching finished bodies in reverent silence. Each guitar left my cramped, humid shop cradled like a child. They started showing up on videos, late-night performances, acoustics and bossa novas humming my name. With every new commission I invested, no new shoes or fancy meals, just better clamps, finer rouges, higher grades of rosewood. I cleared the leaks in the shop, sealed the place every night like a fortress. I worked deep into the night, living for those moments when the right chords bloomed from strings I had strung and tuned myself. The paycheck grew, not fortune but more than enough to send some home. I made repairs on my mother's crumbling apartment, replaced the old TV, bought medicine for Uncle Chico, groceries for the cousin with a new baby. Each act shushed the doubts of the past a little more. It was Mariana herself who first admitted it, her tongue stuck in her cheek. "My cousin, the famous artisan," she almost sounded proud. "We saw your guitar on TV, that singer Paulo Furtado flashed it last Sunday." "Is it yours, really?" I only nodded and let silence answer. Even my father squeezed my shoulder one night, gruff, no words, but his eyes giving back some warmth. But success isn't a single peak. My hands ached every night, knuckles stiff, fingertips rough and numb. Sometimes I spilled glue or missed a detail and the music was muted. Sometimes I snapped at my mother out of exhaustion or turned down invitations out of habit rather than duty. Rage sizzled up at surprises, delayed shipments, a warped soundboard, a customer growing impatient. But now at least the anger had a purpose. I channeled it, shaped it, sanded its edges. Years passed. Newer clients brought bigger orders, a Spanish collector, a Japanese classical artist, each one marking a small victory. I began planning my own real workshop, a place not shadowed by leaking pipes and old resentment, but bright, open, filled with wood's honest scent and sunlight on polished spruce. I found the spot, a narrow 2-story shopfront near Paulista, too expensive for me once, now just plausible. I painted the outside soft grey. I cut thin, graceful letters from shining brass. Luthier Carlo Vieira. The day we opened, I hung my favorite guitar, Ross and her, in the center window where everyone walking by could see her. Invitations went out, clients, musicians, press and family, especially family. I left messages for my mother, father, Uncle Chico, Mariana, all the cousins, aunts, even the neighbors who gossiped those first bitter years. "Come see," I wrote, "I'm opening. You always said I'd never make it. Come see." The night before the opening, I walked the empty workshop, fingertips trailing over smooth tops and slotted headstocks. Sunlight streaked through the window, catching the swirl of dust. For a moment, I remembered all those lonely evenings. Anger turned cold, doubt banging away inside me. I almost wished I could step back and speak to that earlier version of myself, hush the shame, soothe the stubbornness with a promise. All of it will matter. Opening day busted open like a rainstorm. Musicians showed up in droves, some wearing leather, some dressed in faded jeans, some with wild hair, all carrying cases. Chefs from nearby cafes rolled pastries onto my counter, a television van pulled up, cameras swiveling, people snapped photos beside my sign, asking me to pose, to talk, to autograph pieces of wood. My hands sweated, but I stood tall. My family arrived late, true to Sao Paulo time, with Chico limping in behind the others, Mariana on her phone, my father straightening his collar, and my mother with both hands tight over her purse. They paused at the threshold. The bells above the door sang out, delicate and perfect. They circled the room, slow, taking in rosewood and cedar, the tools on their racks, the signed photos on the wall. Mariana touched a neck inlaid with mother of pearl. Uncle Chico ran his thumb over a polished fretboard, grunting softly. My mother seemed almost afraid to breathe. The murmurs quieted as Marcelo Munhoz, the first musician who ever believed, stepped through the door with his famous friend from the festival. He spoke into the hush. "Carlo, can we play something?" I nodded, unable to find words. He lifted Rosenher from her stand, and standing in the center of an audience now pressing in from the street, he began to play. The notes climbed through the room, sweet and strong, filling every crack in those old family stories. Music so alive it chased away years of small talk and disapproval. More musicians joined in, guitars, a quiet tambourine, a flute. The shop filled with sound, and suddenly everything outside seemed to fade away. My mother wept. First a choked sob, then hands pressed to her mouth, shoulders shaking with what she'd feared and maybe with what she'd always hoped. Uncle Chico looked down, blinking back tears as the notes washed over him. Even Mariana put her phone away just for a moment and listened. When the final note died, for that brief hush, every face in the room turned to me, some with pride, some with awe, none with scorn. Marcelo placed Rosenher back on her stand and reached for my hand. "Beautiful woodwork, but even more beautiful sound," he said. People swarmed then, wanting to talk, to touch. My family drifted back to me. My father, not a man of words, pulled me close, his arms like a vice. "You did it, son," he whispered roughly. "You did." My mother's tears faded into a trembling smile. "Your hands, your dream." I should have believed more. All those years I'd fed my rage with their laughter, survived on scraps of stubborn hope. Now, standing in that sunlight, sweat shining on my brow, I understood what the struggle had bought me. Not fame or fortune, but respect, the kind that sinks deep and doesn't get washed away. The city's noise pressed against the windows, music echoing in every corner. I looked around the room, saw instruments on stands, people who believed, and family whose disbelief had finally cracked. With every part of me I had held back, I now held them. I had made it. But more than that, I had brought it home.